Hey, this is Deji.
And Chris.
Welcome to the Lot 1 podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Jason Lubin about getting representation as a screenwriter, how to become a literary manager, and so much more. Let's get into the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Lot 1 podcast. And today we have a special guest. It is Jason Lubin. He is a literary manager and a producer. And he's a principal at First Story Entertainment, which we're going to get into. And we're going to get into your backstory about how you got there. But first, do you mind explaining who you are?
Sure. I'm Jason Lubin. I'm the principal at First Story Entertainment. I can go a little bit into my background. Originally, I've been out in LA about 20 years now. Originally from Michigan, went to USC Film School and started my career at Lionsgate. Was there for 7.5 years. Did a little bit of everything there. I was a floater, worked for the head of physical production on the TV side. Then I worked for the CEO, was his assistant, and then was a story editor, junior CE on the movie side of the company. Left in 2017, worked for Lynda Obst for a year as her head of development. We had a Sony TV deal. And then started First Story Entertainment towards the end of 2018. So it's been a little over 6.5 years now, representing writers, directors, film, TV, podcast, doing a little bit of everything over here.
Well, so I guess what made you want to go into being a literary manager?
Yeah, I think when I first started the company, I was more interested in mainly going off on my own. I felt like I had done the big company at Lionsgate. I'd done the little company with Lynda. And I had always wanted to eventually start my own thing since college. That was kind of the path that I wanted to go on. And producer was very much my ultimate goal. And so when I was exploring kind of going off on my own, talking to people who had made this transition from exec to manager, I even talked to some like indie producers, and they were like, look, if I was starting out now, I'd be a manager. It seemed to be where the industry was going. And so when I first started the company, being a manager was a little bit more of a means to an end. I was like, I'll sign 10 clients. I'll make $100,000 a year pretty quickly and really grow the producing side of the business. Realized didn't make as much money as quickly as I had anticipated, and producing was much harder took much longer to get going than I think I had also anticipated. But this management side really started to take off, and I realized I was good at it. I really liked it. I liked betting on the talent. I really felt like I was really connecting with these great writers and these great filmmakers and getting their work out there. And so since then, it's kind of been a really just exciting part of the business, and continuing to see their trajectories and grow in the industry.
What do you feel like makes a good literary manager?
I think a good literary manager, it also depends on the person. Something I say a lot, and I think a lot of managers will talk about, is it's all about fit. That you might be the perfect client and they might be the perfect manager for each other, but it might not be for someone else. And that doesn't mean either side isn't good. It's just about finding kind of the right creative fit, the right work style, and kind of what your priorities are. You know, some people need someone who's just going to go out and hawk their stuff and get their material into the right hands. Some people really crave that personal attention, that development, those notes. Some want kind of a film producer that's just going to go out and produce their indie film. Some are destined for kind of bigger things and want someone who's just going to like push them in front of the producers who will get their stuff out there. So it really, I think, depends on the person and the client of what they need. But I think great taste, great initiative, kind of someone who is effective at just getting the right people in the right place and connecting the right people. Those, I think, are the skill sets that tend to lead to the best success for a manager.
Do you feel like you've always had these skills?
I think so. I mean, it certainly has developed over time. I think working as a development exec and on the creative side certainly gave me a huge advantage coming into this part of the business, both from a perspective of I had a lot of connections, I knew a lot of people, I had a track record that I could kind of rely on. those all became hugely helpful. But also, I think just this knowledge base of knowing how a studio operates, how those creative teams decide on what material to push forward, how they talk about projects, what it's like being on the other end of the table when I meet with, when I'm going out and telling these producers and executives that they should meet with my clients. I've been in their position. I know what they're thinking about, how they're kind of interacting with these clients, and I can advise my clients appropriately. So I think that's been a huge asset and a huge advantage that I've had kind of moving into this space.
And for those who don't know, what is a literary manager?
Yeah, so it's similar to an agent, right? So we have clients, we represent people, and it's kind of, I think the difference is agents tend to be a little bit more, they're the ones who are kind of going out actively selling people on a much more regular basis. If they work at a bigger agency, they're helping to package projects and then negotiating the deals. Whereas the managers tend to have slightly smaller rosters. They tend to be kind of your first person you go to. So I'm the one who's kind of giving notes on material. I am their day-to-day person. We're talking strategy. We're talking how to manage their agent, how to manage their team, how to manage their career. It's kind of all encompassing. So it's tough because I'm a therapist, I'm an agent, I'm a producer, I'm a life coach. I can play a lot of different roles, and all of them are kind of equally important, and it kind of just depends on the day. Especially during some of the tougher times in the business, that kind of more life side of working with clients and encouraging them and pushing them to keep creating has been hugely important during some tougher times in the business.
Now, you brought it up a little bit in your response right now, but what would be like an average day for a literary manager? Like what would you be doing? Like, say you had a client, whatever, maybe you don't have a client, but what would be like an average work day for you as a literary manager?
I don't know if there's really an average day. I think that's part of the, every day I'm like, where did all the time go? What did I do today? I think look, it's a combination of meetings, right? So I'm meeting with, like today, for example, I had a lot of meetings with executives, development executives, where I'm hearing what they're looking for, what's the mandate, what specific projects do they have coming down the pipeline, what writers are they most excited about meeting, what is their personal taste. All of that is kind of an important component of me gathering all that information so I know who to submit to them. Then I'm doing calls, checking in with people. Hey, did you read this material? Did I send you? Do you have anything staffing? Do you have anything open right now? I had a couple meetings with potential clients. So I'm like just getting to know them. What are they creating? What are they excited about? Questions they have for me, how I work. Is there anything else of theirs I should look at? So this happened to be kind of a writer director. So they sent over a few shorts to take a look at. And then reading. So I'm reading. I have a notes call with a client on Thursday. So I'm reading her script to give notes on. I'm reading a book that is a potential open writing assignment. It's kind of a thriller that a producer sent to me. So deciding which client to send for that. Shooting a podcast tonight, right? It's
Which
that's
podcast?
kind of what it is. It's someone they should watch. You should watch that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of right. It's a large gamut of different types of things that I'm doing on a regular basis.
That makes sense. Yeah, just trying to get a kind of like a grasp for the audience to understand, because like personally before I found out that you were going to come to the podcast, I didn't know literary manager was an actual job title. I know managers and agents and stuff like that, but like, so it's so curious to me to look at it. So
yeah,
really
so just to, and also to clarify on that front, so talent in film and TV, right? So it's not like literary, because sometimes like literary agent means books, right? Books, submitting to manuscripts to publishers. So in kind of the film and TV space, there's talent, which is referencing actors, and then there's literary, which is referencing writers and directors.
That makes sense. Okay,
Nice.
great clarification.
That's good. I like that actually. I have a question about, and this may be maybe a secret or, like a trade secret, but what is your process for developing talent?
It's the biggest secret in the book.
Yeah.
Developing the client specifically, or developing the material?
I would say the client specifically.
Yeah, so I think it starts with when you're first kind of pursuing a client, or having those initial meetings with a potential client. You are understanding kind of back and forth, what are their goals, right? Where do they see their long-term career going, and then where do they see kind of their short-term career going? So, for a lot of my writers on the TV side, let's say, their short-term goal is usually to staff, right? To get staff, which is, TV shows typically have writer rooms, which could be anywhere from 4 to 10 different people. Used to be a little bit bigger. Now the rooms tend to be a little bit smaller because of shorter orders. But like, that's usually, TV has been great for a lot of writers because you can kind of work your way up. So you start at the staff writer level, which is a very, I don't want to say entry level, because it's still a very desirable job that you kind of have to get to after a certain amount of time. But that's kind of the lowest writer on the totem pole. And then you work your way up to story editor, executive story editor, producer, executive producer, showrunner. And so for a lot of these writers, right, so staffing is kind of the immediate goal, and their long-term goal is to become a showrunner. And then we also talk about, what is your taste? What is the types of shows you would want to write on, that you would want to eventually develop and create. So that's we're talking about. So we're kind of aligned on what the ultimate goals are. And then I think there's a lot of crossover between TV and film these days. So writers who are working on both. And so that's always part of the conversation as well. Are you interested in developing features? What types of things would you want to write? Are you wanting to just write your own spec and sell that every so often? Or would you like to get to a point where you're being hired to adapt material or to pitch on big pieces of IP? So all of that is kind of the initial conversation. So we're kind of understanding. I'm very much goal oriented, and I think knowing where we're taking your career is kind of essential to creating a strategy to get to that point. I think there are a lot of people, and this is not just in this business, but generally, where I think a lot of people just kind of fall into things, and sometimes that can work out. But I think the people who tend to be most successful are the ones who are like, this is where I'm going to, and I'm making a decision on, does this help me get there? And I always say that can always change, right? Like, you can always decide, I want to be a showrunner, that's the goal. And then you start getting to that point and you're like, I actually don't like this. I think I'm going to be a feature writer completely. And then you make that pivot, and now all your decisions do that. That is 100 times better than being like, let's see where the opportunities come. And then you kind of like do this zigzag of never really getting anywhere. So I think it's kind of important to kind of have key goals so we can make the right decisions based on where we think your career is going to go. And then, we develop the first couple pieces of material, get those out there, start introducing you to the right producers and executives, and kind of getting you around town. And then once we've developed kind of a few different pieces of material, something I say a lot is there a show you want to write on that you don't have the right sample for? Or is there a type of movie you would like to write, but you just haven't written it yet? And maybe that's something that we should explore developing, right? If you want to work on, I had a client who says, he wanted to work on Star Wars. He's like, my ultimate dream is I'd love to write on a Star Wars show. And I was like, well, then we need to kind of write a sample that would be a good fit for that. Because I don't think anything we have is kind of the perfect fit for that company. And so that's something that we're in process of working on now. So I think that's something that we can always be thinking about in terms of rounding out your portfolio in a way that's going to, again, help you get to the goals that you've set for yourself.
And that's pretty similar for a director as well, right?
Yeah, for a director, I mean, same thing, right? So yeah. Your goal is, what are the types of films you want to make, right? You want to be a big studio director? Do you want to make more personal indies? And so, what is, usually you probably have to do a few shorts. You have to do kind of your first couple samples, for lack of a better word, first. And then what is that first feature, which is probably something you're going to write. I think most people that's the case. I did have a client, I guess she co-wrote the film that she ended up directing, her first feature. But most people write, they write something that they're going to plan to direct. But I think that's something also that's crucial, which is you only have one first feature. And so does that film represent the type of filmmaker that you want to be? Because I think you start getting into a situation where people are looking at this film and being like, okay, this is a small indie rom-com, but you want to go make horror movies. It just doesn't really align, and they're not going to think of this as the right sample to be hiring you to make something in that space.
Yeah. That's definitely helpful for, I'm sure, a lot of people listening. How and when do you sort of decide to sign new talent into your roster?
Like when, or just what
I
triggers
guess,
the
yeah,
decision to say yes?
I guess what triggers the decisions to be like, this is the type of person I want to.
Yeah, I mean, I have tended to, like, I haven't really been in a position where I'm like, I'm only going to sign, like, I'm not like, I'm going to sign this person or this type of person and then go out and find them. I'm more of like, I want to always be in a position where I'm going to say yes to someone that I have to sign, right? When I meet someone and they're such an amazing writer, they're such an amazing filmmaker that I have to work with them, that's what's going to trigger that decision. And I think it's some element of, it's a voice that just feels very fresh, feels very unique within kind of a genre or type of style that seems to be working. So, like, I'm not that everyone has to reinvent the wheel, but they have a personal POV. They have a fun style that really seems to work for the type of stuff that they create. And I think it's also just like, I mean, it's just this like gut feeling of, oh, I can't wait to introduce them to this producer. Or, oh, they'd be great to write on this show. Or I can't wait to develop this type of spec with them. And so that's just when those wheels are turning as I'm reading their sample or watching their short film or feature film. That's when I know I'm like, okay, I'm super excited about this person and invested and need to work with them. So I it's tough because this question comes up all the time, and it's like there's no secret to it, and I think people are like, what is the thing that's gonna convince them yes? And it's like, again, I'm always advising authenticity. I'm always advising be yourself, right? Like, it's very similar to dating, right? Like, yes, you want to be the best version of you, but you don't want to pretend to be someone else because then you're going to be with the wrong person.
Yeah.
And I want to know, like, people all the time ask, I know this wasn't the question you were asking, but people all the time ask, they're like, well, what do you want to read? As if they're going to like send me that or write that. And I'm like, I don't want to read what you think I want to read. I want to read what you think is the best version of you as a creator, because that's what I want to sign. I want to sign, and I only want to sign if that's the right fit. If we're creatively aligned, if your voice really matches how I want to sell you and how I want to take you out into the market, how we want to develop your career together. If you sell me on one thing and then you trick me, quote unquote, into signing you, and you come in and then you're like something else, it's kind of like, what are we doing here? I can drop you at any time, right? Like, it's not like, I'm stuck, Instead, you set yourself up to be with a rep who isn't the right fit for you. It doesn't work out for either person in that.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because for me, it's like something I've slowly began to realize in my filmmaking journey, especially recently with like how the industry is and how it's consolidating. So in a lot of ways, there's a lot more opportunities, but in a lot of ways, there's a lot less opportunities, right? Depending on where you want to land. And I forget who said this. It was someone famous. I saw it on TikTok and it was in an interview, but it was like, why can't short films just be short films? Why does it always have to be the proof of concept? Why does it always have to be the lead in. Like if you're always thinking about, oh, this is going to be my proof of concept for the bigger version, then like maybe you're missing out on opportunities that you wouldn't think to have had as the filmmaker if you would have just been like, I'm going to tell this story in this contained short film format. And I feel like as filmmakers, we're always chasing the how do I get to this? And you're trying to mold yourself, like you're saying, to like, what do you want? Well, I don't want what I want. I want what you can offer, right? You should be yourself. It's an intuition that you get from it. And as filmmakers, we tend to kind of stray away from that because we're just trying to get to the next step. So we try to change who we are to fit a puzzle to then make it to that next step. And it's that double-edged sword where like obviously you have to do that on some level, but it's like I'm discovering more. Like I'm just gonna make what I want to make because I'm discovering as a director producer what my style is. And looking back even at my films starting in college till now, they tend to have a similar style to them. And I feel like I, as a filmmaker, am discovering that. And I don't think I would have done that if I would have just followed what everyone else is doing to try and get to an ultimate goal that may not even exist because I'm not being genuine to myself.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to bring that up.
Yeah, and look, like experimentation is an incredible thing, right? And both early in your career, but throughout your career. And so I would always say, like, try something different. Like, there's nothing wrong with being like, I'm going to take a stab at this and see if it works, right? Is this my style? Is this my genre? I have a client who she started out as the horse girl. Like she wrote horse movies and scripts, and like that's what she was known for, and and then she met this producer who was like, I think they were like talking about all the movies that she loved, and like Jaws was her favorite movie. He's like, why don't you write a thriller? Like, why don't you write a horror movie? And she did it and like kind of fell in love with it, and now that's her brand. So that discovery of your style and your voice, like especially early in your career, right? That's why school is and this isn't just the industry specifically, but broadly, right? It's why you take a philosophy class. That's why you take these things, because it's like, why not, right? Like it's a chance for you to expand your mind and see what else is out there. Not to take away from trade schools and these things that can be specific, but sometimes it's great to just try something out and explore and discover. I mean, I'm a manager. I had no interest in being representation, 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, right? I came to LA to be a director. I was the next Spielberg. Yeah. And then I did all these movies in college, and production design was taking the USC stuff off the wall, and my friend, she's an incredible director, she had a real style to her work. She had a real voice and expertise of her craft, which is why she's a filmmaker. Like that's what was the right fit for her, where I discovered producing. And which has led to this. I mean, it's very similar, but I think that kind of discovery of your own voice and genre, and then you start to see how there's a consistency in all your things, and that becomes your superpower in whatever it is you decide to do.
Yeah, I love all that. I think there's like a fear, right, from filmmakers that without the conformity, they will never make it anywhere. And I think that is like one of the biggest, at least I think so. But I think that what you're saying is that like, if you are learning how to be true to yourself, then you could find the right fit in somebody, and you don't have to find, whenever you find the first, like, if someone met you for the first time and they've never met a literary manager before, they're like, oh, okay, well, I've got to get him to sign me somehow. I don't know how, but it's got to work. But there are a lot more people in the world that do that, and so it's just like the fear that you will never get that opportunity again. I think that's like one of the things that is hard to sort of get over
I think the
especially in
piece of
DC?
advice that I got from a professor in college was no meeting, no job, no opportunity is the be all end all of your career. And what he meant by that was if this thing doesn't work out, it'll be fine. Right. And you shouldn't pressure yourself. It's like, yes, obviously you have this incredible, if you have a meeting with Spielberg or whoever, right? It's an incredible opportunity that you want to prepare for, you want to do well at. But if it doesn't go well, like, it's not like you'll never get an opportunity to ever again, right? If you deserve to be there, if you have the talent, if you have the voice and the instincts and all of this, like, another opportunity will come. And yeah, it's and we can sense that a mile away. Like, the managers can sense when you don't, like, I could say anything and you're gonna want me to sign you, right? Like, and I don't want to rep that person. Like, I want you want me to rep you, right?
Yeah.
I want them to go, Jason really gets what I'm trying to do here. Like, he understands my voice, he understands my goals, he understands, like, how I work and operate, what I'm looking for out of this relationship. And I really liked what he had to say about how he works with his talent, blah, 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 right? Like, that's who I'm looking for, not someone who's like, manager wants to sign me? Yes.
Yeah.
You
It's
know?
like you're kind
It's
of
like,
desperate.
yeah,
Anybody. Yeah.
yeah, just, it's like the same. Again, I use the dating all the time, right? It's like, no one wants to be someone where it's like, it could be, it's literally just, it's a man and he's single, I'm interested. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
date that person, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want someone who wants to be with me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's going to lead to the most successful partnerships, which is how you should look at this pairing, which is we are partners in your career. And we're like, and I think most managers, like agents, sometimes can be a little more short term in their mindsets. Most managers are looking at it as like, they want to be with you for a long time, especially if you're early on in your career, because it's a lot of sweat equity. Like, I don't get paid what I should be paid for my more entry level talent, right? But I'm betting on them because I see the potential and I'm willing to put in that sweat equity of getting them to that point where then it starts to pay off in droves once we really launch the career. And that's why, it's like, I'm looking for someone who I want to be in the trenches with for a long time.
Today's episode is brought to you by Saturation.io. Saturation is a modern, cloud-based budgeting and expense management platform built specifically for filmmakers, producers, and production teams. Designed by industry professionals, it helps streamline financial workflows for films, TV shows, commercials, and so much more. With real-time collaboration features, customizable budget templates, and automated expense tracking, Saturation eliminates the need for clunky spreadsheets and outdated software. It supports seamless imports from tools like Movie Magic and offers powerful insights and controls without that learning curve. So, whether you're managing a small indie film or a multi-million-dollar production, Saturation gives you clarity, accuracy, and control all in one place. With a free tier available and proven for use by producers across all budgets, there has never been a better time to experience the next generation of production finance. Click the link in the description to get started today. All right, let's get back to the show. Pivoting a little bit to First Story Entertainment. First, can we just do a little backstory on how you got that started and then how you got it to where it is today?
Yeah, so again, when I was working for Lynda and I wanted to move on from her company, and my heart was not in going to another job and being a mid-level exec and doing that thing. And I was talking to my friend, actually, the talented director who I had mentioned, and she was like, why don't you start your own thing? I'd have you produce all my movies. And I was like, that's kind of always been my goal, to eventually start my own company. And so I just talked with some people who had made that transition and, got some advice, had some mentors and advisors who gave me really good feedback on the types of things I should be talking about, who I should be reaching out to identify some talent, who, the types of people I should be signing, etc. It's like, I don't know, it's like one of those things where it's like, I don't know if you felt this way of like buying a car where you like, it feels too easy. You just like leave with a car that day. And I'm like, it's a huge purchase. And I'm just like, I have a car. Like, it's just like, I drove it off the lot. And starting a company was kind of very similar. And it's funny because I had so many people that were like, oh my God, congrats. It's amazing. Like they were like in awe that I had started this company. And I was like, all I did was buy a domain on Google or whatever and create a Gmail account, get an IMDb Pro, and like create a company name. And I assigned like an LLC or whatever. Like that's all I did. Like I was like, I'm just kind of cosplaying as a manager. And because managers aren't licensed by the state or anything like that. And then just started calling myself manager. And I get it now because like that is a scary thing, and most people don't actually do the thing, right? Like, and I say this all the time, like just doing the thing is 90% of it. Because most people in this industry all the time, right? They're like, my script is going to be the best thing ever. And I'm like, oh, like, how far in it are you? And they're like, well, I haven't started yet, but it's going to be great. I was like, well, talk to me when you actually do the thing, you know?
Right.
And there's so many, and I think because we see so many of these people in the business who are all talk, right? They're like, they're like, I'm an actor. And I'm like, oh, well, what have you acted in? Or what do are you auditioning? Well, I mean, I haven't done it yet. And it's like, well, again, like you should have create a, get your headshots and start, going out there for auditions. Like that's what makes you an actor, not saying, you're the thing. So I was a little like worried about that, of like, they were kind of giving me too much credit. And then I just started signing people, and I thought it was going to be harder to sign people and easier to get them jobs, and ended up being reversed. It ended up being super easy to sign people. There were tons of super talented people that were interested in me repping them. And I was very picky, and I'm very glad I was, to like really take the time to sign the right people, the people I thought were most talented, because that's really, yes, I work my butt off, but that's such a huge component. Like I want to be known as the guy who sends the best people and the right type of people. I think that's the other thing that I think I do very well, which is really listen to what they're looking for and get that right person to them. Because I want to be, when they have a specific need, they're like, hey, we're looking for this type of writer or this type of director. Do you have anyone? I say no if I don't. Because I think it's important to be known as the person who's solving the problem, which is they have a slot that needs to be filled. Do you have the right script? Do you have the right filmmaker? Do you have the right writer? And really help fill that. And so I just started signing people, and then off to the races. And my first client, her goal in the first year was to get an agent and get staffed. And we accomplished both of those. Took out my first feature script about 6 months in, and ended up getting that set up with a producer. And then that got on the blood list for best horror or genre screenplay. And so really started taking off.
That's awesome. It almost feels like the business is like your discernment in talent, like your ability to like find the right people and then give the right people to the connections and the contacts. And I'm curious about, like, speaking for a person who maybe wants to do what you're doing, become a manager. What were some of the things you've had to do in order to get not just your people signed, but like find places for them?
Like get them their jobs, you're saying?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a taste, like, as you're saying, taste is essential, right? And knowing who has the talent, knowing how to get their material to the best it can be. And there's always, materials always being constantly redeveloped and new notes, etc. But, the bar is so high just to get something set up in development. And so helping give those notes, right? Having a real understanding of structure and character and story, and understanding how that's going to be perceived in the business. How are things, because obviously they're sending me great first drafts, but we got to continue to work on it and get it to the best that the two of us can get it to. And then it's hustling. I'm constantly networking. I'm constantly meeting new people, cold calling people that I don't know already. Obviously, when I have a great piece of material, it helps with that. Every time there's a new spec, I go through the list of producers that are working around town, and it's always, okay, which companies are the right fit for this? And then just start reaching out to them. And at this point, 6.5 years, 15 years into the industry, 6.5 years into this business, I've developed a long Rolodex of Rolodex was this old thing that flips with whatever. Now it's all digital. Yeah. But I now have this incredible network of people that I can always be constantly sending stuff to, but I'm always building it. There's always new people to meet. There's new people in the business. There's new companies. There's always more people to get to know. I think there are some reps that just, they send it to the same 5 people. And if they say no, then it's like, that's it. And I think, again, that's one of the reasons I think I'm very good at this job, is because I'm just like, I like that there's always more to do. Versus I think a lot, there's certain jobs in this business where you're just kind of like sitting back and waiting. Whereas I wish I could get to a point where every piece of material is set up and in production and done, and then it's just working on new things with people. But unfortunately, there's always more to pitch and more to take out, and always thinking of different ways of setting things up, putting things together, and being creative. We just attached a Mexican director to a project that's probably going to be shot in Mexico or some Latinx, or South American country, and trying to put it together that way. What soft money is there to take advantage of? What tax incentives and production companies locally can we connect them to? Changes in the business, vertical projects, or where AI goes. Is there other ways of putting projects together that's going to benefit the clients and get it forward?
Yeah, that's really cool. I have been thinking about this recently, about putting a list together, creating that Rolodex, because I think, especially as like new filmmakers, I don't know how much people are paying attention to developing the relationships on a Rolodex, where they are constantly, reaching out to people and developing, like for as a filmmaker director, right? Like I'm like, all right, well, who do I want to work with next? Like, what's a good DP I want to work with? A good production designer, like and then like trying to meet these people. And I think that's like a really interesting point, is to really work on putting that together.
Something that I think might be helpful to people in that situation, really at all points of your career. And I saw it at a couple meetings today where one person in particular, they just did not have a great answer to this question, which is like, what are you looking for? Or how could I be helpful to you? Like, and that goes for, like, obviously as a rep, and if you're unrepped, like, that's a very clear one-to-one relationship and interests. But at a networking mixer, or, at a part, whatever, I'm constantly meeting people that aren't looking for representation, or an exec that's looking for a script or whatever. It is like, if I was to introduce you to someone, who would you want that to be? Like who are you trying to meet, or would come your way that is going to be helpful to wherever you are in your career, and who are you looking to connect with, right? Like at a networking mixer, it's like, we're always worried about getting stuck in a conversation with someone that we have there's nothing that we can really do to be helping each other. But if you can kind of understand and answer that question, that's good, helpful information for me to know, because then the next conversation I have, if I know that person can help the first person, I'm going to be like, you need to talk to them, right? And that's obviously at an event, but even beyond that, it's, if you're a filmmaker and you're building that team and you're building that network, say, look, I'm looking to meet with talented DPs. I'm looking to meet with people in the production space that I could collaborate with or be working on projects with. I have a film, so I'm looking for financing for, or whatever. Like if you can kind of get a sense of some of the ways that people could be beneficial to you or what you might be looking to, that will, I think, more naturally come your way versus having to do it all yourself, right? I think most people want to help other people, just sociologically, like that's what people are. But the more challenging you make it for people to do that, the less likely they are. I say it all the time, like people will be like, they'll reach out to me. They're like, "Hey, I'm looking for a job," and I'm like, "Okay, great, good luck." Good vibes your way. But if you say, and I always say, like, find me on LinkedIn. If you hear there is a job at this company and you see I'm a mutual connection to the hiring manager, I will 100% send your resume to them, assuming I don't think you're an idiot,
Mm-hmm.
And but you have to send me the email that I can forward, right? It's like make it easy for me to help you.
Yeah.
But if you put it all on me to do the work for you, that's not going to happen. So I think for a lot of, and again, at all levels of your career, like when I say, I have answers. Like when I go into a meeting, I'm like, here's the things I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for either my clients to get hired, or I'm looking for a director to attach to this thing, or I'm looking for financing for these projects, or these are the types of people I'm looking to connect with. I could very eloquently speak to the ways that, things are going to be helpful to what I've got going on. And that way, and it depends on the situation, right? If I meet another rep, I'm always like, who are your directors that are meaningful, right? Like that I might be able to attach to a client script, or here's my directing clients that I think would be an advantage to attaching to a piece of material you might have, or what are things we could take out together, right? So it's having those kinds of things to be talking about with people about, like, here's what I'm looking for, here's the type of person I want to connect with, I think helps you build that network, builds that community that's going to become very helpful to you.
And that's so incredibly true. Everything you're saying. Like we've met a lot of people on this podcast, and I've had a lot of great relationships flourish from that. And actually recently I got out of the blue, just completely out of the blue, got an email for potential work that I did end up doing from someone that I had met a really long time ago who doesn't even work in the film industry, who gave me the rec and probably would have never recommended me if I hadn't told them I have a production company and I'm always looking to shoot extra stuff, on the side, like interviews for, some sort of marketing campaign or some sort of campaign, like whatever it is, like hit me up, and they know that. I haven't talked to these people in like a year, and suddenly I got an email that's just like, hey, can you shoot this thing? And I'm like, yeah. And the next week I was shooting it. So like, the domino effect can be pretty crazy. And I've recognized that recently as well. And I feel like it is definitely an underappreciative or a definitely underutilized thing that filmmakers tend to, because it can be overwhelming. That's a lot of people to constantly be like, yeah, I should message this person, or I should reach out to this person or grab coffee with this person. But it's essential. This industry is all about who you know, which can suck, but is also really, honestly, really cool. I'm a very sociable person. I like to have conversations. And so for me, that's what I love. I love being able to go and meet with people and have conversations, even if nothing comes from it. I just want to know more about you and your things. That's it. Like, show me some cool stuff, that's it.
Yeah, and I think the other half of that, which I think your example is such a great example of, which is not being like networking laterally, right? We talk laterally. Yeah, laterally. I work in the entertainment business. I don't know words.
You're not a mathematician.
And right, it's this idea of, like, a lot of people are like, how do I get to the manager? How do I get to the important executive? And I'm like, do you have writer friends? Do you have filmmaker friends? Do you have your community? Right? It's like that they're so focused on the up that they're not looking at the people around them, the people who are at their level, who are the people who are going to be supporting each other through a long career, right? Like when, a lot of people, I have former interns who are executives. I have fellow assistants, people, classmates that all go on to doing great things. And if I was not focused on networking with anyone at my level, let alone below me, those connections wouldn't be there. And a lot of those people will remember that if you're like, they're such an asshole to me. And I think a lot of times it's this idea of like, if your writers group is all helping each other out, and like my clients will send me other writers they know that they met with, that they're like, hey, my buddy, so talented, they're looking for a rep, will you read their stuff? And I say, absolutely. And that community is all very helpful, and they want to help each other out. And usually when one person succeeds, a lot of like showrunners are hiring their friends, right? So they remember the people that have been with them through developing and giving notes on their drafts and being part of their writing community. They're going to remember that. Filmmakers, right? If you're, and sometimes it's something where they get offered and then it's like, hey, I'm unavailable, but you should check out this filmmaker that's a buddy of mine, that they're exactly the type of thing that you're looking for. You should hire them, right? But if you're the dick that never, cared about any of your fellow creators, you're not getting that call.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you have some clients who have upcoming show on Netflix. What was the process for getting them to that point? Because I'm sure you worked with them throughout that entire process. Did it take a long time? What was that process like?
Yeah, so this was there's an upcoming show on Netflix that a client got hired to write in the writer's room, and it was a fairly quick process compared to some of the other staffing things I've had recently. So they had seen actually an article in Deadline about the project and kind of reached out and said, I love this. This is perfect. And I said, yes, I'm already on it. I was anticipating the email from my client. And so I reached out to, and they happened to know the showrunner from school. So they reached out to her. I reached out to the production company and ended up submitting his material to them. She said same thing, kind of go through the production company. And so then it's just kind of a part of a process where it's like follow up, making sure they read him. And then from there, it just is a few different meetings. First met with the production company executives, then met with the showrunner, and then met with the Netflix executives. And each part of the process, it's like a few less people, I think, meet each step of the way. So even the Netflix, when he met them, it was like they're still meeting more people than will get hired. So it's always like,
yeah,
hopefully it makes the cut. And
getting into the next round.
And then ended up getting hired. And so all that process ended up being fairly quick, just a few weeks. But because I think it was from when he met to getting hired, it was probably 3 weeks, give or take. And it was probably a couple weeks before that we had submitted him. So that's a fairly quick process. Sometimes there'll be shows where it's like, it'll get greenlit and they'll have all their people or at least all the meetings that they're going to do within a week. But I've had other situations where it's like, I was looking at it today actually, where I'd submitted clients for staffing in mid 2024. And it's just like, oh yeah, we're like, send the stuff. We think we'll get greenlit in a month. And then it's Amazon's just been taking forever to make decisions. So it can be one way or the other, but usually once they've gotten the actual green light to do a room, that's when it moves pretty quickly, because it's just at that situation where it's like they want to start the process so they can get into writing and then into production.
The key thing there that you said is he knew the showrunner from school.
Yeah, well, it was a combination of I think knowing the showrunner definitely helped, but I think going back to some of the stuff I was talking about earlier that I think was even more important, to be honest, was he had a sample that was just like perfect for the show.
There we go. Cool.
And which is both it's fortunate and unfortunate for the business sometimes, where I think the thing to take away is like they are looking for the right writer, right? They're looking for someone who really brings the POV they need or the style they need or the type of voice that they're looking for to be in the room. Unfortunately, I do think there are some shows where it's like they're expecting a sample that's like so perfect, which you just can't have for every show. So again, to one of my early points as well, right, which is be thinking about, is there a type of show you want to go up for having a sample that would be right. So if you want to work on a multicam, and I've seen this a few times recently where it's like, you want to work on a multicam show, even if you've written on multicams in the past, they kind of want to see a multicam sample. If you want to work on a procedural show, do you have a procedural sample? And so I think having some of that stuff can be helpful to, if they don't know you, and that's why a lot of times I'm trying to get producers or showrunners to know the clients before they get to the point where they're going to be hired.
I have a question. This is a thought I've been thinking about recently, and it had to do with like the idea, because I was casting for this short that we're doing, and I was thinking about like when I saw this one actor, I was like, oh, he's got the look that I was looking for, and there's and it reminded me of finding that perfect sample, right? You've got the perfect sample, exactly what we're looking for, and I was just thinking about like within the industry, right? Like there is like a kind of look when you think of specific genres or whatever that have just been cemented because they exist, and I'm wondering if there is something that is sort of similar in like in shows or like if you're going out for Star Wars, right? Like you got to have a writing sample that's similar to that, or you're trying to go out for different shows. Like, are there types of writing samples that are more favorable than others, if that makes any sense, based on sort of the general like ideas that are floating around in Hollywood?
I don't know if there's necessarily better samples. Okay. Shorter. I think it's more about thinking, like I said, it's about thinking about the shows that are going to hire you. And because I would say, right, like for a while, there were a lot of people, like every comedy writer, they wanted to write Fleabag. And every drama writer wanted to write, now it's White Lotus. It was Succession. I'd say, you're not going to get hired on White Lotus. Like Mike White does all the episodes. So it's, whereas nowadays, I think, no one tells me they won't write on things. For a little while, people were like, oh, a procedural broadcast show. Like, I'm not going to write on those. And I was like, well, that's who hires people. So I think you should. Maybe you should rethink that. And so that's why it's like, again, be thinking about if you're so hyper, or if the types of thing you're writing for are just not, there aren't many shows out there that are the right fit. There's just less opportunity. It doesn't mean you can't or you won't, but just the shots at bat are going to be a lot fewer. And so that's why it's like, as you're building out your portfolio, having a procedural sample if you're a drama writer, or a multicam sample if you're a comedy writer, can be useful to go along with your single cam sample or to go along with your ongoing prestige drama pilot. So I think it's just about having the right thing that is. And I think even with this, as I said, like this was such a perfect fit. And that's, I think, why it just like was such a smooth process throughout, that it was like my client was right for it. He had this relationship. He had the perfect sample for it. Like it like, I don't like which part of that process would it have been different if any of those things hadn't happened? Like, I just don't know. We don't know. If he hadn't known the showrunner, would, even with the perfect sample, would it have still happened? Maybe, or vice versa. But I've had some things where it's like, people are like, this is a period sample of the show's contemporary. And it's like, well, nothing. It's still a crime drama. It's still a great female forward character. Like, it still has all the pieces of the script. And other people are like, a client got hired on FBI International with a script that wasn't a procedural. So it's like, things can happen, different showrunners and different executives are a little bit more open to things that maybe aren't as cookie cutter in. So it kind of just depends. But yeah, having the perfect sample and knowing the showrunner and all these things, right? It just makes it easier than same thing in any job, right? If you know the person hiring and your experience is perfect and you have the resume that just literally reflects everything they're looking for, obviously it's going to be a easiger process than if any of those things aren't the case.
Yeah, I definitely have more questions for you. Maybe I'll ask you after, but we gotta wrap it up a little bit. But before we go, Chris has his special question.
That's a me.
Yeah, that Chris.
Well, I've been actually the last couple of minutes I've been thinking about how I want to phrase this, but I think I have an answer. If you had one piece of advice to give anyone trying to find some sort of representation from someone, say a literary manager, what would that one piece of advice be?
Is meet people. Referrals are always the best fit. And so having that network and meeting people is your best bet at finding the person who has the connection with the representative that's going to, identify your work. I think most reps don't take unsolicited, even like competitions and everything like that. While certainly helpful and get you out there and build your resume, I think almost nothing beats that personal touch of this person is looking for a rep. I read their script. They're awesome. I know them. They're awesome. You should pay attention to them. It's just almost, I should say, again, not always the case because I've certainly signed people off programs. I've signed people off, some of the paid programs, stuff like that. But who am I going to pay the most attention to is someone who I trust that reaches, especially when you get to a point where it's just like your reading list is so long, and I'm going to prioritize when my friend sends a script than some random outreach that happened.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me. Before you go, where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at First Story Entertainment. I believe it's all spelled out. And then I am on TikTok as First Story ENT, I believe. I'm also on X, I think First Story ENT. Probably should have memorized all these before I got on here. But those are, I'm on those three. And I'm trying to grow my TikTok following, so follow me on TikTok, please.
Yeah, follow them for sure. And then you do some consulting, right? Script consulting?
Yeah, so in addition to my core business of representing writers and directors, I also do script consultations and just general consultations as well if there's something else that doesn't get covered with the script, which includes script reading and giving notes and helping people develop their material. So I think it can be very helpful to get someone who kind of is in the industry and has their it's reading tons of material so they know what the bar is and what's getting out there. And so it can kind of give that advice on both, are you at that point? And then how to get your material to a place that's in a better position to get representation.
That's great. And they can find you on the socials for that, or should they go to your website?
So either you can either DM me on the socials, or there's like a Google form to fill out on those as well.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Jason.
Looking forward to maybe chatting with you another time.
Of course. Have me on again. And thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap for today's Lot 1 podcast episode. Thank you so much to our guest, Jason Lubin. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Huge thanks to our producer, Mina Vazarian. You rock, dude. And shout out to today's sponsor, Saturation.io. Make sure to check us out on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot 1 Podcast. That is the LOT number 1 podcast. And also check us out on lot1productions.com to see all the fun stuff we got going on in the company. All right, filming of the day is Per Diem. Chris, what is that all about?
A daily allowance for costs incurred while filming on location, usually for food.
Yeah, that's right. So get your per diem, people. All right, we'll see you next time on the Lot 1 episodes of the podcast. Bye. Cut. Let's keep that in.